Hello and a very good evening to you. I hope you had a good day. Welcome to KTN Prime. This is the most comprehensive bulletin in the land. Now, when terror elements walk in and out of the country at will and target with impunity those whose job it is to protect others, the question must be asked: is insecurity in northeastern Kenya becoming the order of the day? Well, tonight, as it should be, our focus is on the forsaken north and the state of security in the country. We will also be going live to Mombasa, where John Juma is standing by with details of the arrest of a terror suspect. And in Eldoret, Mercy Kandie will bring us the details of the latest controversy surrounding the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. Well, back here in our talk studio, Linda Ogutu will be joining us with a conversation that brings into sharp focus Kenya's security situation in light of recent events. Linda, who will you be speaking to this evening?
Now, to let you know that in just a few minutes, but yes, we're focusing on the attack in Yumbis in northeastern Kenya. It is an ambush that has put security, or lack of it thereof, in northeastern Kenya on the spotlight, of course, on the minds of so many Kenyans. And we're looking at the strategies that the government has put in place. Why are these strategies not working? Because if you recall, this latest ambush in Yumbis happens with a curfew in place. You have the Cabinet Secretary Interior offering a blanket amnesty for the youth who have joined Al-Shabaab. That seems not to be working. And looking at the scenario, what has been happening in Yumbis since last week, Al-Shabaab are able to cross in and out of the country. We'll be asking security questions. Why are they able to cross in and out of the country? What is Kenya doing wrong in the fight against terror? So, in studio tonight, I'll walk away so you can have a look at my guest. I'll be speaking to Peter Alingo from the Institute for Security Studies. We'll have Andrew Franklin as well, security analyst. He's on his way here. We have Byron Adera, ex-Special Forces. And at our INM studios, we'll have Masood Mwenye, spokesperson for National Police Service. We will be having a conversation with these four gentlemen on why the strategies that have been put in place by the Kenyan government to fight terror in northeastern Kenya is not working. Nancy, that is a conversation you want to be part of.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to getting some answers to some of those very pertinent questions this evening. Well, that's coming up on KTN Prime, but first, let's start with the headlines.
What have you been telling Kenya?
We not tell Kenya.
Tell me exactly what you've been telling Kenya.
We lost one officer, 2 injured.
Garissa terror attack triggers a day of confusing information from the government.
Serikali imepata detonator.
Imam charged over explosives found in Mombasa.
We had no dispute until 2006 when the Chigai Prison came in and trespassed upon the land.
Teachers Union now says Moi Referral expansion land was grabbed from them. And boys under siege. 12 Moranga school children accuse their teacher of sodomy. Great to have you join us for KTN Prime. William Silla is our sign language interpreter, and I'm Nancy Kachungira. Now, one police officer has been killed in the latest terror attack in Garissa County. The officer was killed after a convoy responding to an earlier attack was fired at. Conflicting reports on the number of those killed had dogged the ambush, with the National Police Service saying that not a single officer was killed in the attack. KTN's Dennis Onsarigo has the latest from Yumbis.
The far-flung town of Yumbis caught the attention of the Interior Ministry 5 days ago after the Somali-based Al-Shabaab terror gang posted pictures of their militants atop Kenyan trucks bearing Kenyan registration number plates. The Interior Ministry dismissed the claims by the Al-Shabaab that it had lectured residents of Ijara and went ahead to hoist their flag at a police station there. The Interior Ministry told the country a bunch of Al-Shabaab militants had harassed residents of Ijara in Yumbis in search of water and food, but they were repulsed. Last night, the terror gang returned to Yumbis, but this time in Fafi. And this is the aftermath of the attack. Bullet cartridges, Police fatigues left behind as Kenyan security forces battled a group of about 25 heavily armed militia. 4 vehicles were destroyed in the attack just hours after another was destroyed by the same militia several kilometers away from the scene of the second attack. In a statement to newsrooms, the National Police Service says not a single police officer died during the attack, but the man leading an operation back in Garissa maintains he lost one of his men to the attackers.
What is the situation in Garissa?
What do you know yourself? What have you been telling Kenyan?
We've not told Kenya.
Tell me exactly what you've been telling Kenyan. The truth is that there was only a landmine which blew a lorry. One officer was injured, the hand was injured, and we sent reinforcement. There was an ambush. There was nobody who was killed.
We lost one officer, 2 injured.
It wasn't until this evening when the Interior Ministry admitted that indeed the attack had claimed the life of a police officer.
You should actually not say things like this until you find out. Kenyans are apprehensive about this Al-Shabaab thing. So you should play the role to be in the forefront, to ensure that your country is safe. So I'll give you more information when I get.
So what is the state of the soldier that was injured?
The state of what?
The soldier that was injured.
No, he's just got a shrapnel. You know, their hand was a little bit injured. So, because I've not been briefed, but it's out of danger.
The officers were responding to a distress call from their fellow policemen whose vehicle had run into a landmine in what appears to have been a trap. A witness who got at the scene of the attack Tuesday morning told KTN the ambushed police officers left their guns at the scene as they fled. Highly placed security officials have told KTN the Al-Shabaab terror outfit operates from Boni Forest and has not left since the last time they were spotted in Yumbis, Garissa County. Denison Sarigo, KTN Prime.
That attack causing a certain amount of confusion due to conflicting reports. But something else that attack in Garissa did is it exposed the Kenyan government's soft underbelly yet again. Despite the government's tough talk, securing the border with Somalia has remained elusive as terror elements walk in and out of the country at will. The security apparatus have employed various tactics from curfews to amnesty, but the results are the same. So what is the permanent solution to securing northeastern Kenya? KTN's Ben Kitili attempts to find out.
Monday's incident comes just days after Al-Shabaab militants walked into Yumbis and allegedly talked to the residents there. Weeks after the largest terror attack since the 1998 bombing of the US Embassy in Nairobi, an attack on the Garissa University College that left 148 innocent Kenyans dead. But where did the government go wrong concerning security in the north?
Information is the line between security and insecurity. Whoever has information over the other has the advantage. Whether information is in the hands of government or in the hands of the enemies of government.
Following the attack on Garissa University, the government imposed a dusk-to-dawn curfew in Garissa and neighboring counties in efforts to outwit any terrorist operatives.
Do hereby issue curfew orders in the counties of Tana River, Garissa, Wajir and Mandera.
A raft of changes in the country's security apparatus saw President Uhuru Kenyatta appoint Joseph Nkaiseri as Interior Secretary. Joseph Boynet also took over at Vigilance House, replacing David Kimayo as the Inspector General of Police, as Philip Kameru was appointed the head of the National Intelligence Service, NIS. All this and insecurity in northeastern Kenya continues to be a major weakness for the Jubilee administration.
How many officers must we lose before we learn how to counter ambushes, not to have officers, sleeping in their Land Rovers?
The state then tried a relatively new approach to curbing terrorism in northeastern Kenya, offering amnesty to radicalized youth. Even more promising, the initiative came from the leadership in northeastern Kenya.
We will, with immediate effect, commence to identify them, to document them, and to expose all the members the financiers and sympathizers of Al-Shabaab within the next 1 month.
And when the 30 days given by Duale in the northeastern leadership lapsed,
we are not answerable to anybody. We owe nobody any form of a list.
Area members of parliament had promised to go to the counties of Mandera, Garissa and Wajir to talk to the people on the ground. But with a broken self-imposed 30-day deadline, the country is no closer to winning the war on terror.
Let the government involve, from the presidency, let them involve the leadership at the grassroots level for them to realize the security of every citizen of this country.
Questions now abound on what happens to the information that the attack on the Garissa University was planned and carried out by Kenyans, and that many Kenyan youth have been radicalized. Will the public trust the local leadership again? The Kenyan security hierarchy has continuously maintained that it will leave no stone unturned in securing Kenya's painfully porous borders, and especially northeastern Kenya. However, the state has continued to run into obstacles, and its strategies, the latest being amnesty, are seemingly not working. Experts say the Kenyan government's ability to win the trust of the local communities in northeastern Kenya will be the only way to win the war on terror. Ben Kitili, KTN.
Now, these attacks do, of course, have far-reaching consequences. In fact, let's go now to a crisis in the education sector. 95 schools have been closed in northeastern Kenya over insecurity. The 83 primary and 12 secondary schools shut down due to lack of teachers who have refused to go back to work due to insecurity. The worrying figures were revealed by Education Minister Professor Jacob Kaimenyi when he appeared before the Parliamentary Committee on Education. Rita Nina reports on this education crisis in Mandera, Wajir and Garissa counties.
The northeastern region has grappled with insecurity for years, but a terror attack in November last year triggered what has now turned into a full-blown crisis in the education sector in Garissa, Mandera and Wajir counties. In the November 2014 bus attack in Mandera, 22 teachers were shot dead after they were ejected from a bus they were traveling in at Omar Jilo near the Kenya-Somalia border. The Kenya National Union of Teachers was quick to warn its members overworking in Northeastern.
All teachers teaching in Northeastern, and they are not residents of Northeastern, don't go back. Don't go back. Don't try.
With that warning, over 1,000 teachers did not report back to work, citing insecurity. The Teachers Service Commission, keen on saving the situation, sought to recruit 1,350 teachers. On the 4th of February this year, the TSC advertised for 896 posts for primary school teachers and 454 posts for post-primary teachers. It appears the TSC failed in its mission, and the government says the crisis is getting worse.
95 education institutions which have been closed because of insecurity.
Of the 95, 83 are primary schools and 12 secondary schools. Add to that the indefinite closure of the Garissa University College following last month's attack that left 148 people dead. The Northeastern Technical Training Institute is also closed.
The minister is liaising with the Minister of Interior and Coordination of National Government to ensure that all learning institutions are provided with adequate security.
The effect of lack of teachers began being felt during the first term of the 2015 school calendar. Learners were left to their own devices, with a few local teachers available, unable to handle the workload.
We haven't received any non-local teacher. Initially we used to have 27 teachers.
In some schools, the 2014 KCSE candidates attempted to fill the void left by the teachers.
And I'm here because the teachers have refused to come back to this school so as to teach the girls. They can't see these girls suffering because they are candidates and they're waiting for their exams this year.
With the perfect formula to deal with insecurity still very elusive, it may be a while before non-resident teachers use chalks and chalkboards in Northeastern, and the ripple effects of the closure of schools will be felt for some time, with the fate of hundreds of candidates eyeing the 2015 national exams hanging in the balance. Rita Tinina, KTN, Nairobi.
Forsaken North, that's the hashtag we're using this evening. Do go ahead and join that conversation. Right now, we'd like to add a few voices to this conversation, though expert voices, that is. Linda Ogutu is sitting down with a panel. We're going to delve into this issue of insecurity in northeastern Kenya right now and give us a few insights into that. Over to you, Linda.
Nancy, thank you. Of course, we have expert opinion on this, people who have dealt with security all over the world, and probably will help us to understand what's going on along the northeastern border of Kenya. In studio, my immediate right, I have Byron Adera, ex-Special Forces. We have Andrew Franklin, resident security analyst, and of course we have Peter Alingo from the Institute for Security Studies, and we have Masood Mwenye, spokesperson, National Police Service. He's joining us from our I&M studios, that is in City Center. If you missed the names of the men we'll be having a conversation with this evening, we have my immediate right, we have Byron Adera, ex-Special Forces, we have Andrew Franklin, security analyst, we have Peter Alingo from Institute for Security Studies, and then at our I&M studios in town we have Masood Mwenye. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on KTN Prime tonight. Here's the concern for me though. Today's ambush comes just days after the alleged militia went into the same village. That was last week. They rounded up the residents, put them in one place. They preached for over 6 hours. They ended up hoisting their flag at a police force, and then they left. So a few days later, that is yesterday night, these men were back. Alingo, let me start with you. It seems like you have a militia that is able to cross in and out of the country. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there is a big problem here, and the Kenya-Somali border, as it were, is increasingly becoming a bigger problem for this government, for us as Kenyans, and that is what we need to focus on. What is the problem there? Yes, we know the border is porous and people can cross in and out, but we know there is a problem. That problem resides in Somalia, across the border the other side. But that is not just it. That problem is also on this other side of the border, within Kenya. So we have a problem that transcends the border, crosses the border, a problem of a transboundary nature that has its origins in Somalia, but now getting entrenched, deeply rooted into Kenya, within us as Kenyans, within the society, within the community, particularly in the northeastern part of this country. We need to deal with that. How do we deal with that? We must begin to ask ourselves very, very difficult questions, and those are the things that we need to address. We have a border that is porous. We know that yes, the border can be crossed in and out. What do we do about it in order to safeguard the security of the borders in terms of people who cross in and out of that border? In this particular instance, it is extremely disturbing that we have a situation where people come in, ambush a village, do what they want to do there, go back again, leave a warning saying they will come back,
and they actually
including hoisting their flag there, and actually they come back, and they just have a free day, in terms of doing, there is a problem here.
Andrew Franklin, basically this problem is bigger than we think along the Kenyan-Somali border. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that Al-Shabaab has changed its operational tactics. That Al-Shabaab is in fact focusing on the visit of President Obama on July 25th. The attacks actually started ramping up 7 days ago, at the beginning of last week, when a police post was overrun. We're still not quite certain what happened there. There have been attacks in Somalia as well against KDF positions and the like. Then last Wednesday and then Thursday nights, 2 successive nights in a row, Al-Shabaab, 40, 50 troops come in, occupy mosques, preach for hours and hours, say we're coming back, to actually ambush to plant landmines. In other words, and then ambush a follow-on force of police who, had whatever number of casualties they had. They left their weapons behind, disappeared into the bush. This is a ramping up of al-Shabaab activity, which is focusing on the visit by President Obama on the 25th of July.
Their main objective
its objective is to embarrass the government of Kenya, to demonstrate how the government of Kenya is losing control of its border regions. In other words, we are developing ungoverned spaces along the Somalia-Kenya border. And ultimately, the high-value targets will be attacked in and around Nairobi on certain dates. We can expect attacks possibly on the first anniversary of Mpeketoni, which is coming up. The 4th of July in and around Nairobi will be a key date. The objective is to force Obama not to come, to cancel his trip at the last minute, because that visit has already been reduced from 2 days to roughly 8 hours. And, if the country becomes untenable, ungovernable, and it appears to be ungovernable, and al-Shabaab is very good with its media. We know that. They were taking film of Mpeketoni, which I was certainly not aware of when you were interviewing me there on June 16th. But they then released that film showing in early March of this year to remind us, almost as a recruiting film, to show us what they had previously done. Since then, we've had 2 massacres in Mandera. We had the Garissa University massacre. The fact is that we are not in control of our border regions, and our police are increasingly overstretched.
Byron, let me bring you into this conversation. This is my concern. Last week, when this group went to Yumbis, they went, preached, hosted their flag, and then left. And of course, there were allegations that the man who was leading this group was a gentleman known as Mohammed Kuno Elias Gamadere. There's a bounty on his head. I think, if I'm correct, about 20 million shillings on his head. So one would have imagined the security forces would beef up security in that region. One, you have one of the most wanted men leading this operation, and then 2, you now know they have the ability to cross in and out of the Kenyan border. So you'd expect beefed up security in the area.
Okay, I'd want to say the change does happen, but when we do not appreciate that change, then we miss out on very crucial lessons that, like they say, the history of correction is actually the graveyard of abandoned fads. If you do not take that into account, then you run the risk of being part of the grave yourself. Now, having mentioned that, the fact that the border is really porous is not new knowledge, so to speak. It's been there with us for quite some time. I think there's effort that's put in place to, get things done, the wall construction and all the rest that comes with that. But then in terms of numbers, and I did speak about that the other day, it's not really a fanciful, strategy unless those numbers actually make sense. We could refer this to, a psychological, science that's been invested in terms of so much research in the past, and you could learn from that. If you do not have people centered and have a lot of authenticity and, focus on their jobs, motivated, and actually doing exactly what they're supposed to do.
Are you talking about the police force now?
Exactly. So the increase in numbers in terms of having a lot of show of force, because this happened and we got a couple of guys rushing in to do this and that, is for me very cosmetic if it's not making sense, if the numbers are not really applied to the tasks at hand. So basically missing the big point in terms of the true picture of the reality, which we have not awoken to.
Okay. Just to hold on to that thought, let's bring in Masood Mwenye, spokesperson, National Police Service. He's joining us from our I&M studio. Masood, thank you for joining us on KTN Prime. We're looking at what happened in Yumbis and the ambush that happened yesterday night. And this is an ambush that has raised a lot of questions in terms of security, in terms of manning the northeastern Kenyan border, that is the Kenyan border with Somalia. And Byron is in studio with us and is saying probably the problem lies with the numbers. You need to show your might along that Kenyan border so that whoever it is, be it al-Shabaab, gets the idea that this is a country that is well prepared for anything. What sort of numbers do you have on the ground? And before you even get there, what exactly happened in Yumbis yesterday night?
Thank you, Linda, and allow me to appreciate your inviting us to share in the perspective. As we said in the day, and we issued 2 statements. The first statement was to basically bring the country to speed on what happened. And the second statement was now to put things in a better perspective. You will note that there were so many items of information flying left, right, and center, mostly misleading. Some of the items of information also creating a lot of fear and unnecessary tension to the country. But we corrected that. And as you may now be aware, our officers were engaged by bandits, terrorists particularly for that matter. As the outcome was that we lost one officer who succumbed to injuries as he was being prepared for evacuation to the hospital. 4 officers have been successfully evacuated to Nairobi for treatment. 2 vehicles have been destroyed. 2 have been salvaged, including 1 lorry which is totally intact. So basically that is the situation on the ground. But again, further to that, we want to say that massive operation has since been launched there. And this brings us to the issue which we are raising. What are our numbers? A combined force from the National Police Service, the Kenya Defence Forces, and other law enforcement agencies are on the ground. But we must appreciate that, as every speaker said, this is an issue which we all know about. The war being waged against us as Kenyans is clear to everybody. And it is not because we in the National Police Service lack the ability or the urge or the drive to fight this war. We are doing everything that we can. And that is why...
Let me just interject a little bit, Masood. You're saying it's not like you lack the ability to do this, but what kind of numbers in terms of personnel are we looking at in northeastern Kenya?
We have almost 6 units there. Besides the National Police Service and the Kenya Defence Forces, we have specialized units. The Rural Border Patrol Unit is there. The Rapid Deployment Unit is there. The GSU is there. And this now brings in totality quite a heavy contingent of officers on the ground. And I don't think that it will be fair for people to assume that the police out there are idling around. As this incident was happening yesterday, these officers were actually on patrol in the evening, knowing the intensity of the area, knowing the responsibility bestowed on them. They were out in the field patrolling. Unfortunately, this happened. So we must give credit, particularly to the officers, because they are saying, we don't care whether we are few. We'll still go out and protect our country.
Okay. Masood Mwenye, just stay with me. We'll get back to this conversation in a few minutes. You're watching KTN Prime, and we thank you for staying with us. Now, the minute all this information started trickling in about the ambush in Yumbis, a lot of questions were coming in, and there were concerns about the real numbers of were there casualties, how many people have been injured, what exactly is going on. And here is the thing. Different government officers started giving sort of quote-unquote conflicting information about this. Edith Kimani now has a special focus on the record, and she looks at the comedy of errors with focus on the attack in Yumbis yesterday evening. Take a look.
When an emergency occurs, the need to communicate is essential. And in the case of the Yumbis emergency today, communication was, as has been witnessed before in Kenya, the first casualty. The first official communication after the Yumbis ambush came from the police service. George Kinoti, that's a police spokesperson, confirmed the incident, saying there had indeed been an ambush in Yumbis and that it involved police officers. Now, the spokesperson who communicated, by the way, this was only after the Standard team had called him, then went on to confirm that 13 officers were missing and another 2 were wounded. By mid-morning, the country was still waiting for official word from any security or even government official. And it was not until 11:30 that word finally came, but in form of a tweet. I mourn and pray with the family and friends of the police officers who lost their lives in Yumbis. They died protecting us. I salute them. That message was sent out from the official President's Strategic Communication Unit, officially recognized as representative of the presidency, if not the president himself. Right about the same time, KTN managed to speak with one of the senior county commanders, Rashid Abdullahi, who had this to say.
We lost one officer, 2 injured, and Al-Shabaab, we have injured several of them, ambayo wameenda na gun wound.
Now, shortly after that, the Interior Ministry issued a statement with a new version of events. No police officers confirmed dead from the Yumbis attack. One officer who is injured has been airlifted to Nairobi for further treatment. Then, the National Police Service sent a statement that was careful to avoid any mention of deaths and or missing persons. By this time, Dennis Itumbi, who is a Senior Director Digital and presumably tweets on behalf of the Strategic Communication Unit, issued an apology. I posted a wrong tweet on Yumbis. It was purely based on media reports. Interior KE confirmed reports were wrong. I deleted and apologized. Now, it was not until late afternoon that the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Interior, Joseph Nkaiseri, finally spoke out, and he was not very pleased.
What is the situation in Garissa?
What do you know yourself? What have you been telling Kenyan?
We've not told Kenya.
Tell me exactly what you've been telling Kenyan. The truth is that there was only a landmine which blew a lorry. One officer was injured, the hand was injured, and we sent reinforcement. There was an ambush. There was nobody who was killed.
The comedy of errors that unfolded with the crisis communication can be blamed on anyone, but the consequence is severe. As confusion raged on in Kenya over who was responsible and whether there were in fact any fatalities, the Al-Shabaab, through their spokesperson, took advantage of that confused space to advance their own narrative, the result of which was this. Unfortunately for Kenya, these scenes have become familiar. Remember this?
Smoke you are seeing from the building is as a result of the terrorists setting some mattress on fire.
The inconsistencies live on in the IG's office. 4 days ago, reports emerged that a village in Yumbis was being harassed by the Al-Shabaab. In responding to the incident, the Inspector General of Police, Joseph Boynet, described Yumbis as a village in Ijara. Yumbis is in Fafa constituency, kilometers away from Ijara, a separate constituency. A local leader from Fafi told us that the village where the harassment was happening was called Kwasalo ad Tumchi. To err is certainly human, but when government representatives give conflicting information during a time of crisis, then the dent is not only on their trust as individuals, but the organizations they represent. Edith Kimani for KTN.
Conflicting information at a time of crisis. Edith Kimani there focusing on the errors that have been made by different government offices this evening. That story by Edith Kimani forms the basis of our big question tonight, and we are asking, should President Uhuru Kenyatta overhaul his communication structure? Looking at this story that has been done by Edith Kimani, what some officials in his office had to say after the Yumbis ambush, should he start considering overhauling his communication structure? Should President Uhuru Kenyatta overhaul his communication structure? Putting in mind the reactions that we had immediately, reports of this attack in Yumbi started coming out, the conflicting reports that Kenyans have gotten from the different offices, and of course this creating a lot of confusion in the minds of Kenyans over really where can they get authentic information. So that is our big question tonight. Should President Uhuru Kenyatta overhaul his communication structure? You can tweet us at KTN Kenya, at Nancy Kachungira. You can tweet me at Linda Ogutu, and at KTN Kenya. Of course, we'll be glad to sample some of your views on this particular big question. In studio, I still have with me Byron Nadera, ex-Special Forces, Andrew Franklin, Security Analyst, Peter Lingo, Institute for Security Studies, and of course, at our I&M studio, we have Masood Mwinyi. He's a spokesperson, National Police Service. Gentlemen, thank you for staying with us. And I'm going to start with you, Byron, and I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot, but I'll ask this question nonetheless. There is this concern that when KDF went into Somalia in 2011, the idea was to cripple Al-Shabaab. But then there is this school of thought that maybe in crippling Al-Shabaab, some of the Al-Shabaab members now moved away from Somalia and got into Kenya. That is why you have a scenario of a militia group that is able to cross in and out. They seem to know their way around. They seem to know what they're doing. Is that a school of thought that you'd buy into?
From the strategy perspective, to a given extent, I'd want to say that if you look at the US, for example, the war against terror is all the same across several countries and into Iraq. You'd accuse the system of having failed in the post invasion strategy, and I think that could be shared in the same way as to what we're seeing in terms of solidifying internal defenses. Well and good. I mean, there's so many gains that have been, brought to a basket in terms of, annihilation and, trying to decimate the Al-Shabaab inside Somalia. There's several examples that you can shake a stick at. But it's worrying how, a lot of defenses that ought to be thought alongside the grand strategy of invasion weren't put in place to make sure that, the post-invasion strategies remained as solid, just so the initiatives were kept on our side. The cross-border movements are really worrying. The kind of attacks, brazen attacks, so to speak, in terms of, daylight, the changes in terms of strategies, it's now moved to more like psychological, in the sense that, they got all the power to kill you, and they could round you up, get you into a mosque, and do preaching for about 2 hours or so. And then they go, disappear in the thin air, and days after that they come back and manage to get, set up a very well ambush, kill or destroy equipment, vehicles, and all sorts of things. This gets us into in a region where we'd be concerned about how we manage information that we get, how we manage the change, how we get ourselves attuned to the new tactics that they are trying to, exploit in order to, advance their interests.
Okay, Alinga, could the enemy be within?
Yes, the enemy is within as well as it is outside across the border there. But this is the question that we need to ask ourselves now, moving forward. And first, we also need to empathize and sympathize with the police officers who do a great job. I think we give them credit, and they do a lot of things to protect this country. There are no two ways about that. We recognize that ability. But we must talk about capacity. We must talk about ability. But we must talk about these things in the context of two things. One is the technical dynamics of the war that Kenya is facing with Al-Shabaab. Two, the political dynamics of that same war. And these are two things that need to be well understood. And, appropriate responses that speak to these two aspects need to be identified. That is where we get it wrong. Al-Shabaab as a problem, the tactical things, the change of tactics that we are talking about, these are, within the realm of playing politics, the political dynamics of this war, the psychological aspects of the things that we see. They speak to the political dimensions of this war. But there is also the technical dimensions that speak to one, capacity, ability of our forces. Let's not just confuse this and talk about numbers. Numbers in itself, is not enough to play this game. We have to talk about numbers in terms of the technical capacity, the technical ability of those numbers to respond and contain these attacks. We are talking about an ambush where police officers just simply ran away, leaving their weapons. It means that they were faced with a more superior, level of technical arms, and these are the things we need to speak to.
Focus
Then there is the political dynamics of this that we need to speak about. Is there sufficient political will that can then drive the technical aspects of this war? I think we are losing it there. There is no convergence there, and there is no sufficient drive that can, make these two dimensions be seen in a proper way, that proper responses can then be put in place. That is why we end up reacting.
Okay.
Yes.
Andrew Franklin, quickly, do you see a scenario where Al-Shabaab is trying to create a territory of its own and along the northeastern Kenyan?
Well, what I've been pointing out consistently in the last year is how Al-Shabaab is developing sanctuaries along the Somali-Kenyan border, from which it can operate against the government in Mogadishu. It is not operating against the government, to overthrow the government in Nairobi. It is carving out ungoverned spaces along our border with Somalia in the 4 frontline counties, which include Lamu. There are 5 counties now under curfew, which apparently has had no effect on the ability of al-Shabaab, who may be already operating from within bases inside Garissa or Mandera or Tana River Delta or Wajir, to move around. I also think it's important to point out that al-Shabaab is now operating in 40, 50-man units. This is not 4 guys going into the Garissa University College. Also, the premise that somehow Operation Linda and Chi crippled al-Shabaab is absolutely false. In fact, as early as December 7th and December 12th of 2011, I was writing in the Business Daily that Operation Linda and Chi has apparently failed. These are important aspects. I don't believe that the administration police, who are brave because they go out there, I don't believe they're properly trained in counter-ambush techniques. I don't believe they're properly armed. The fact that there was a lorry grinding along out there so close to the Somali border with officers on the back doing what? You don't go on patrol in a lorry. And I believe that we need better training, and we may need to bring in outsiders to
try
train
and fix this.
And mentor our people.
Andrew, we need to wind this up because of time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on KTN Prime. Byron Adera, ex-Special Forces, thank you so much. Andrew Franklin, our resident security analyst, and Peter Alengo from Institute for Security Studies. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on KTN Prime tonight. And of course, at our I&M studio, we had Masood Mwenye, spokesperson, National Police Service. We thank you for joining us on KTN Prime. Now, let me take you over to Nancy. And there has been some new development at the coast with regard to the fight against terror and a focus on security for that matter. Nancy.
Right, thank you very much, Linda. Let's head over now to Mombasa, where John Juma is standing by. Now, John Juma, we understand that an arrest was made today in Mombasa. Can you tell us more about that?
Thank you, Nancy. As you've rightfully put it, an arrest was made on a Muslim cleric by the name Sheikh Mohammed Khalid was arrested yesterday after a raid was conducted in his house in Bondeni area, and police found a hand grenade, a plastic explosive together with a detonator. Police are still puzzled as to why these things were found in his house and what was the intention, considering that this is a cleric who should be a peace ambassador. Now, the sheikh was arraigned in Mombasa local today morning and charged with 3 counts, one of them being a member of Al-Shabaab, second count being found in possession of explosives illegally in his house and being a thief, charges which he denied, and the magistrate ordered that he be remanded in police custody for the next 30 days to allow police conclude their investigations. Prior to that, there was a meeting by Mombasa County Commissioner, chaired by Mombasa County Commissioner and attended by other police chiefs, whereby they disclosed that they've managed to foil some attempted terror attacks in the county, and they're praising good cooperation with the public for letting them know about these kind of attempts, and they're assuring the public that all is well and they're not going to allow anybody attempt to cause havoc in this county.
Heavily suspicious. What is worrying us is nyumba yake inapatikana vitu kama hivi. The second, hiring vehicles, kisha anabadilisha official number plate, anabandika madude yake. Why? What is the motive? This individual anaenda hapo ana hijack, alikuwa anatumia huo msikiti kurecruit. He wanted to warn everybody else who has intentions, who thinks anaweza kukaa pange, ahujumu serikali, apige feri, apige wapi, tutampiga kabla ya kupiga serikali. We gonna hit on that individual before he hits wananchi. That one here is a guarantee I'm putting for you on the table. Because hapa serikali imemwaga security ambao hata hujui ni nani. Now we are monitoring every suspicious information, every suspicious individual.
Well, the fight against terror, slightly more positive results in Mombasa than in the northeastern part of the country. Let's remind you of our big question this evening. We'd like to find out from you whether you think that the president should overhaul his communication structure after the embarrassing incident today. Well, I've got a message here. This is an SMS from Victor Wasonga in Nakuru. Thank you for being part of the program. And you say, yes, the president should be careful with his communication team. Contradicting information from the state is a shame. There's a no here, someone who didn't leave a name. In an SMS, you say, should the way that the media, who have become security experts apparently, report on these incidents be overhauled? Well, you're throwing the ball back into that court. Thank you for your opinion. And there's another one here that says what needs to be done is revamp police and intelligence units, increase pay terms and build proper security facilities along the porous borders, as well as work with other stakeholders to boost security. Kenyans are tired. We'll continue to share your thoughts with us on the program. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on KTN Prime. Now, the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital has been at the heart of controversy for a while now, especially with a multi-billion shillings project that is said to have involved corrupt dealings. Let's go to Eldoret now, where Mercy Kandie is standing by with a report. Mercy, apparently the plot thickens, and now it has thickened to involve land grabbing.
Yes, the plot indeed thickens, Nancy. Today, the KO Teachers Sacco were in court in what they say was land that they bought in 2004. 2,000 teachers bought this land, 100 acres from NSSF, they say. But today they were in court saying that the land has been grabbed from them. And this is the catch. The chairman, Fidelis Kimutai, insists that when they put up beacons to, demarcate the land for their teachers, then that did not work because they were forcefully evicted out by the Kenya prisons. And this is it, that recently beacons have been erected for the proposed project of the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital. So that hearing has been pushed forward to July 1st. The teachers' verdicts, where the teachers are eagerly waiting for the verdict. They're telling me this is money that most of them have decided to invest it in. And it should also be noted that most land within Eldoret Town, about 500 parcels, are controversial, including the court that was hearing the case today sits on grabbed land. The county offices sit on grabbed land. The EP land also sits on grabbed land, including the RD offices itself. Nancy, back to you.
Well, thank you very much for that update, Mercy. Of course, we'll be following that story to see how it develops. We're taking a quick break. When we get back, we've got more stories for you on KTN.
Good evening and welcome to KTN Business. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. The central bank has released the first Kenya Bankers Reference Rate Compliance Report, ranking banks according to interest charged on loans. The new tool is expected to give consumers the flexibility to choose banks that offer what would be considered as affordable. Now, with the reference rate set at 8.54%, Transnational Bank topped the list as the most expensive lender with an interest rate of 16.96% above the reference rate, meaning customers attract as much as 25.5% interest on their loans. In the same category, private lender Dubai Bank has been listed as offering the lowest rates in the country with a 4.57% premium on the top of the reference rate, giving consumers personal loans of 12.91 interest. Of the commercial banks in the Tier 1 category, Barclays Bank has emerged as the most expensive to consumers looking for personal loans with a maturity of more than 2 years. The bank gives consumers personal loans at 19.86%, with Standard Chartered, KCB, Equity Bank and CFC Stanbic following with 19.4, 16.71, 16.5 and 16.34% respectively. And moving on to more business, Equity Bank has begun its quest to grow into a Pan-African bank with entry into the Democratic Republic of Congo. This follows the 75% stake purchase in Pro Credit, with operations expected to start in August. This makes Equity the first local bank to spread its wings beyond East Africa, with its sites firmly trained on the continent for growth. And as KTN's Charles Gitonga reports, Equity is hoping to rip big from Congo's largely unbanked population.
It is a signature that marks entry of Equity Bank into the Democratic Republic of Congo's banking space, subject to regulatory approval by the financial authorities in Kenya and DRC. Equity has acquired 79% stake in ProCredit Bank Congo at a cost of 4.4 billion shillings, a bank that has operated in DRC for 10 years.
This is a public company. It's not an NGO like we did in Uganda. Skills and competencies. It's not personal, it's not private, it's a public company. We looked at the shareholders and we were amazed that we somehow share some shareholders.
ProCredit Bank is the 7th largest bank by assets in DRC, exceeding $200 million in worth, an equivalent of the total asset base for Equity's subsidiaries in Uganda, Rwanda and Tanzania. It has a customer base of 170,000, most of them being SMEs, a client base that typically resembles that of Equity Bank in the Kenyan market.
The bank we are talking about in Germany is committed to creating centers of excellence around the world in terms of SME banking and microcredit.
According to Dr. Mwangi, Equity is well aware of the tough business environment in DRC caused by years of political crisis, but the 85 million population, of whom 96% remain unbanked, is worth taking the risk for. The bank will leverage on experiences learnt in South Sudan and Kenya's less stable towns of Mpeketoni, Mandera and Garissa to crack the Congo market.
If we go and do what we have done in Kenya, bring every Congolese on the table of resource allocation. Take away from those who have and give to those who don't have at a price of just the normal interest rates that we give in Kenya. We may see lasting peace being achieved.
The bank is also going after DRC's fast-growing economy, which registered an 8.6% GDP growth in 2014 to hit $32 billion and is projected to maintain an average of 7.2% from 2015 to 2019 against an inflation rate of 1%. The banking space in the country also remains less competitive at a penetration level of 19%, comprising of 18 banks, with the 5 largest ones being family-owned. The sector is, however, growing at a rate of 30%, the highest banking growth rate in Africa. Equity will therefore maximize on agency and mobile banking in partnership with Airtel, the largest telecommunications services provider in Congo, to beat the rivals.
That infrastructure, we believe, is available to us to use and to bridge distance and at the same time overcome the challenges of infrastructure.
The move to Congo marks Equity's 10-year growth strategy to crack 10 new markets. On the cards for the bank include Ethiopia, Malawi, Mozambique and Nigeria as growth markets for the future. Equity becomes the first local bank to go beyond the East African region on its quest to become a Pan-African bank. Charles Gitonga, KTN Business.
As Kenya makes efforts to reposition itself as travel tourism destination, emphasis is also being placed on elevating Kenya's status to top business tourism destination. Tourism Cabinet Secretary Phyllis Kandia says formation of national convention bureaus across the counties will consolidate and increase Kenya's share of the meetings, incentives, convention and exhibitions, better known as the MICE market. Speaking at the KICC today, Phyllis Kandia said the current dull tourism environment has affected the hotel industry that heavily relied on international visitors for revenue, and it is through diversification of services that the sector will get back on its feet. However, availability of high-quality facilities are a key factor in determining Kenya's readiness for business tourism. Nairobi, Mombasa and Kisumu are presently the only counties with internationally classified facilities. Travel advisories and terror alerts, coupled with unstable environments in parts of the country, have tainted Kenya's image.
As a destination for MICE, the rest of the products, that is the beach and the safari and all the other products, the culture and so forth, will leverage on the MICE product.
And that's it for KTN Business. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Have a good evening and thank you for watching.
Brian Nyikuli will captain Kenya's 15th side during this weekend's test match against Portugal, in a match that Kenya will field 4 newcomers. This will be Simba's first outing since losing a 28-10 to Zimbabwe in a Rugby World Cup qualifier on 6th July last year. And they look to post positive results as the country seeks to rise from a current ranking of position 32. Emmanuel Mavala, Jacob Uji, Darwin Mukidza, Samuel Yeche, Peter Karia and Robert Aringo will be making their senior international debut when Portugal takes Kenya this Saturday. With the World Rugby Board having granted the fixture full test status, Kenya is geared on improving the current world rankings number 32.
My boys are ready because the mood at camp is okay. Right now, as we speak, no one has pressure. I think we just have individual pressure whereby as a team we have to perform as one.
The experience we gain in the Vodacom Cup will assist the team and has assisted us in gauging how to play against big forwards and how to play against a team that is well versed in size.
Kenya will miss the services of long-serving captain Wycliffe Kopondo plus influential Kelly Andola, but their absence will not dent Simba's vision. Brian Nyikuli will wear the armband, which comes with a lot of responsibilities.
Pondo has been one of our most outstanding team captains, but is still part of the setup and still part of the team. He's only held up by his studies.
The shoes that he's left are big to fit, but I'm capable of doing that, and through his help and also through the help of the management and my boys, I can say I'll be able to deliver in all the games that we are playing.
After hosting Portugal, Kenya will travel to Harare for a date with Zimbabwe in the first of their Africa Cup Rugby Division 1A fixtures on June 13th. They will then host Tunisia in the second encounter in Division 1A on June 28th before facing off with Spain on July 18th in another test match before winding her schedule with a Division 1A match away to Rugby World Cup bound Namibia on August 8th. Winning all these matches will be bonus for Team Kenya.
We have to do something special this year. By something special, that is winning all the 5 games and making sure that our ranking improves. And for the first time ever, if you get to top 25, that to me will be an achievement.
Namibian Oscar Lambert will take charge of Saturday's test match between Kenya and Portugal at Nairobi's RFEA ground. And anyone will agree that the new managers of the Kenya Rugby Union Football are having a very, very hard time. And that's after Bamburi Cement stepped aside from sponsoring what has been the side's one of the biggest achievements in rugby history. KRU's spokesperson Michael Kwambo, however, explains that the cement manufacturers has not pulled out completely, but has given the union a time to put its house in order. Bamburi expressed their displeasure on how the 2014 edition was managed. Bamburi seems to have followed the cue from Safaricom, which stopped its sponsorship for the annual 7th circuit. Rugby sponsors appear to be waiting for the outcome of the expected special general meeting, which will discuss the fate of the suspended vice chairman, Philip Jalango. And that's all we had for you in today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahid.
Right, so on our big Q this evening, we asked you whether you think the president should overhaul his communication structure, and the results are in. The poll results, that is. 65% say yes, he should, and 35% say no. Thank you for your contributions this evening. I got a message here from someone who didn't leave a name, but you sent an SMS in and you say yes, an overhaul of his communication unit is inevitable. This is not only the genesis of collective responsibility, but the foundation of public trust. That tweet from Itumbi is no different from the burning mattress balderdash by Olelenku on Westgate. And Alan from Mombasa, you say the least of my worries is coordination of communication by our government. The political will to defend our nation is lacking, and that for me is more worrisome. But let's end this on a positive note. There's a tweet here from Mutinda, and you say, I think this is a time at which Kenya as a nation should pull together and not pull apart. And I think that's a good thing to remember. Thank you for being a part of the bulletin tonight. Meresha Oiti was our sign language interpreter, and I'm Nancy Kachingira. Good night, God bless, and see you tomorrow.